After my undergraduate degree, I switched to computer science through a conversion master's. There are multiple ways to switch to computer science, and in this video, I'm going to discuss about why I made the switch and why I chose to do it through a conversion master's compared to other methods. Let's begin. I did my undergraduate in business and economics in London, and I wasn't too passionate about it. There were a few subjects that I liked, like Chinese language and statistics and game theory, but that was pretty much it. For some reason, ever since my first year of university, I had a hunch that I wanted to switch to computer science, although I've never done any programming before then, but I was still going to a lot of events and conferences on technology. In the beginning, I tried to teach myself how to code through self-learning and online courses. I think we all heard at least one story about a person who taught themselves how to code online, and now they are this super skilled engineer that earns a lot of money. There's plenty of online platforms where you can watch tutorials and enroll in free courses and even pay an affordable price to get a certificate at the end. I think for a lot of people, this is a great and affordable way to dabble into programming and build your skills and portfolio. However, I think this mostly fits people that are confident in their abilities to learn hard skills on their own. And 4 years ago, that was not me. Back then, I enrolled in 2 online courses and I never finished them. Now I have the confidence to teach myself things without putting a debilitating amount of pressure on myself, at least half of the time. But in the beginning, I was influenced by external voices that were quite negative and quite gatekeepy over computer science. I was also struggling with self-limiting beliefs, thinking that I was not smart enough to do the switch, so I gave up on the courses that I attempted. But I got my degree now. Despite my dumb brain back then, I still really wanted to make the switch, and I came to the realization that I needed somebody else to provide me the learning structure and teach me how to do it, in order to take the focus and pressure off myself and allow myself to immerse into the learning process. Also, I think it's very important to mention that computer science is a deeply vast field, and it does not only relate to programming. As I said earlier, when I became interested in pursuing computer science, I kept bumping into this weird gatekeepy attitude. Basically, people were telling me that if you're not obsessed with coding to the point where it's taking over your life, you should not switch to computer science. Now that I've switched to computer science, I'm gonna tell you, there are so many technical jobs out there that do not involve coding at all. Computer science is about exploring the ways in which computers can help humanity make progress, and that can look in a million different ways. For example, I used to work in cybersecurity as an incident responder, meaning that I helped companies recover from cyber attacks and identify the vulnerabilities that allowed attackers to get into their systems. I learned how to use an insane amount of technical tools, and I learned so much about computers. Yet, I never wrote a line of code. Now for my PhD, I began coding much more, but in a very unexpected way. I'm using game design engines to build climate change simulations, and although I always played computer games, I never had the drive to build my own. It was only after I got exposed to the variety of subfields within computer science that I became interested in this kind of coding. There are ways to switch into the field that give you a better overview over the vast kind of work that you can do as a computer scientist, and that was a big plus of my master's. My course was the Computing and Information Technology Conversion Masters at the University of St. Andrews in Scotland. A Conversion Masters is typically a 1-year postgraduate course designed for people who have never studied that particular field. So my master's was for people with no qualifications in computer science to help them switch into the field. It is a very intense course that tries to pack as much as it can into 1 year to help you make the switch. There are many universities across the UK that offer conversion masters in computer science. During my masters, I really enjoyed the range of subjects that I was able to choose from. Each semester, we had one mandatory programming module, which for me was in JavaScript. Other than that, I could choose from a wide variety of courses, such as green technologies, artificial intelligence principles, software engineering, or digital heritage. Digital heritage was quite a niche course. It was all about how to implement virtual reality and 3D modeling for the preservation of heritage. And this is the course that gave me the idea to apply these technologies to simulate climate change, which ultimately turned out to be my PhD. Even in my PhD lab, my colleagues work on such diverse problems, from creating medical diagnosis systems, biotechnology, and even tracking bird populations. You can really apply computer science to almost any field, and I don't think I would have understood the breadth of this field have I not pursued a conversion master's. I think if I stuck with online courses, or if I tried an adult education bootcamp, which I did consider, they would have only taught me one coding language at a time. However, I do think there were disadvantages in having such a wide range of courses throughout my master's. As I mentioned, the course was extremely intense, and you had so many projects and deadlines all the time. It was quite strange having these short sprints of 4 to 5 days where I was working super intensely on one particular project, for example, building a game in JavaScript, to then having to switch my focus entirely to a completely new project like researching AI ethics or building databases with SQL. This happened almost every single week during that year, and that made me feel like my focus was very scattered. I understand that it must be very difficult for the university staff to compress all of that into 1 year, and I do feel like I learned a lot. Yet, I don't feel like I built a lot of long-term skills throughout that year because I always had to switch between projects and I never was able to immerse myself into a subject fully for longer periods of time. I think that if you already know which area of computer science you want to go in, an adult education bootcamp or online courses might help you build that skill faster than a conversion master's would. Luckily, I have the opportunity now through my PhD to build long-term skills, but I would have definitely liked during my master's to be able to focus more on my subjects, even if that meant prolonging it and making it 1.5 years instead. Of course, this was also very stressful. I did my master's during lockdown, and although I moved to Scotland for my studies, I never had any classes face-to-face. Therefore, I did not have any interaction with any of my peers until much later that year. And that was really difficult because I was not able to see that my colleagues were also struggling so much with the intensity and the workload of the course. I initially thought that I was the only one who was finding it very hard, and that took a bit of a toll on my mental health. Luckily, I was able to meet my course mates eventually, and I realized that we were all in the same boat, which was very comforting and made me more motivated to finish my degree. When I spoke with my friends that have done coding bootcamps, they also described them as being very intense and challenging. However, these coding bootcamps typically last 2 to 3 months, so overall, they might turn out to be much less stressful than a conversion master's. Speaking of peers, this was another great advantage of doing a conversion master's: the ability to meet like-minded people who had similar interests and ambitions to mine. I met some of my best friends from my master's, and living in St. Andrews was such an incredible experience for me. I grew up in a very small town surrounded by nature, and after living in London for a few years, I wanted to go somewhere that was the complete opposite. London will always have a special place in my heart, but after a while, I got so sick of how busy, expensive, and noisy it was. I just wanted to do a strong course somewhere that was quiet and had a lot of nature and a closer student community. I was quite surprised to see that a small coastal town like St. Andrews was still very expensive, but the cost of living and the cost for doing a conversion master's were still much lower in St. Andrews than in London. Coding bootcamps also tend to happen in places like London, and they're insanely expensive, and they don't offer you the opportunity to get a loan like a studying course would. I was also not sure at the time about the niche of computer science that I wanted to go into, so those were mostly the reasons why I decided to go with a conversion course. I further chose to do my course at the University of St. Andrews because it is the best university in Scotland according to most rankings, and also one of the best in the UK, and it has a strong reputation amongst employers. This brings me to another advantage of doing a conversion master's, which is gaining access to career opportunities that are very profitable. With a conversion master's in computer science, you now have all the required qualifications to apply for most technical graduate roles, which specifically ask for a degree in engineering, computer science, or some of the other hard sciences. Throughout my own job search, it did not seem that all employers thought that having a coding bootcamp would meet these requirements as well, which didn't always make sense to me. Still, there are people who complete these bootcamps that go straight into software engineering roles and do not have to start with graduate schemes. As for the people that that I personally know who completed these boot camps, they had a really hard time finding a job afterwards, but that might be due to many reasons. And from my own experience working in tech startups and helping them with their hiring processes, my bosses also seem to believe that coding bootcamps were too short, even though they probably teach you really valuable skills. You might also have more versatility when applying to jobs if you do a conversion master's in computer science instead of doing a coding bootcamp or a course in a particular language. As mentioned before, you can find computer scientist roles within almost any field, from cybersecurity to healthcare, AI, environmental science, and so on. However, if you pursue a coding bootcamp or online courses in a particular language and build a strong portfolio, you'll probably still get job interviews for those specific skills. My friend who did a bootcamp in London further mentioned that the company who organized his course also offered support in finding a job after the completion of the course. In conclusion, I believe that a conversion master's is very suitable for people who might not be fully sure about what area of computer science they want to go in, but they still want to pursue a career in technology and want to explore the field of computer science. It also provides you with a great learning structure and an opportunity to build strong connections. And it will set you up as well for fulfilling the requirements for many technical graduate roles. However, if you know the area in computer science that you want to pursue and the skills that you want to develop, bootcamps or online courses might be more efficient for you. Every approach has its own benefits and limitations, and not everybody suits the same learning style. If I were to do it all over again, I think I'd still stick to the conversion masters. Let me know if you have any more questions, and here's a video where I discuss more in depth my experience doing a PhD. I'm Maria, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video. But I have a degree now, bitch.